welcome you all for this podcast series. A great initiative, unique initiative by our Fogsi president, Sunita Tandulwadkar ma'am. I, Dr. B. Kalpana, Fogsi Fertility Committee chairperson, will have a conversation with Professor Jyoti Dogra Sood, legal member of CARA. Every chairperson will have a conversation with different speakers. So all our 46,000 FOGSI members, gynecologists, will be watching this podcast at 8 p.m. Gradually, the reach is now beyond the gynecologist into various sectors, today into Bar Council too. It is my privilege to introduce our Fogsi Sunita Tandulwadkar, ma'am, who doesn't need any introduction for the gynecologist, but for the sake of others. It is my honor to introduce her. Sunita Tandulwadkar, ma'am, Fogsi President, HOD of Endoscopy and IVF Unit, Ruby Hall Clinic, Founder Director of Solo Clinic, Pune. She is also Medical Director of Stem Cell Research Center, Alive, Pune. She has got the credit of delivering first stem cell baby of India and also world's first stem cell baby at 46 years in 2018. And she has occupied various prestigious positions, past president of IAGE, president-elect ISAR, founder president of Ovarian Rejuvenation Society. She has got 80 publications and also editor-in-chief, advisor of various journals. She has received a prestigious award from President of India in 2012. Let me list out all other awards.
No.
She has received various prestigious awards. It is beyond our time to list her awards. Ma'am, may I request you to deliver the welcome address and blessings for this podcast?
Thank you, Kalpana. Thank you so much. First of all, let me congratulate you for having Jyoti Sood madam here. Ma'am, it's a pleasure for all of us because I know today's podcast, the dialogue, Kalpana, congratulating you again for the topic which you have selected. It is such a burning issue. And so many times it happens that there is no way we can help. And when we ask for adoption, it is such an complicated issue, and maybe this podcast will reach out to many more needed people, I must say, so that the adoption procedure in India can become simplified. Jyotiji, this 8 p.m. every day Gyan Pravah series is one of the series with my 30 committee chairpersons. I'm so proud of them. They are leaders of tomorrow. And today, with their creativity, their passion, their thinking, they select the topic, which may be academic or non-academic. It may be a politician, philosopher, or personality like you who come in the picture, and we get to have a dialogue with you. So 30 to 40 minutes dialogue into one subject helps us to go into intricacy. And I'm congratulating not only Kalpana, but my each and every committee chairperson over there. And I request all Foxians, 8 p.m. daily, Foxy ke saath jud jao for a Gyan Pravah. Thank you so much for being with me. And as the protocol say, Jyotiji, only both of you will be in the frame and I will be logging out. Thank you. I'll be joining the delegate link and will listen to your podcast equally. Thank you, Kalpana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunita. It's so humbling to be in your presence.
It's an honor to be in the frame with you, Jyotiji.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your blessings for this podcast. Now, it is my pleasure. The topic of discussion today is every child deserves. Here, it is my pleasure to invite and introduce Professor Jyoti Dogra Sood, legal member of CARA, Central Adoption Resources Agency, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Women and Child Care, Government of India. She has been attached to Delhi University, uh, and also she has got 2 decades of experience in law. She has also drafted the living conditions of children in institution. Welcome, Professor Jyoti, for this wonderful podcast. Now, let us start our discussion. Um, Surrendering a child or adoption is not new to us. Even in epics, Mahabharata says that Suryaputra Karna uh, was born to Kunti, unmarried Kunti, with the power of Siddha mantra. Kunti left Karna in river Ganges, and Karna was taken by Adhiratha and Radha. When Karna came to know about his birth history, he was really ashamed, and he didn't even accept the offers given by Kunti and Krishna before Kurukshetra war. So that was the psychology of the adopted children. As per regulations, if a parent is almost 45-year-old, less than 2-year children are given for adoption. But at the same time, if PAP is around 55 years maximum, 8 to 18-year-old boy or girl is given for adoption. They know what is happening around them. So then what would be the psychology of these children, and how is the bonding between parent and adopted child?
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana, for setting such a beautiful tone. And I think in giving this example of Karna, I think you've kind of made my work a little easier. Because see what you told, that when Karna got to know about it, he was very ashamed, right? And now what we do is that, whenever there is counseling for prospective parents, we tell them that, it's not something to be ashamed of. You have to own up the child, and the child needs to know that, the child has been adopted. Because you would have to first set up a trust bonding. When you don't tell the child that you're adopted, when you don't have that conversation with the child, then there is a trust deficit, and that really impacts the psychology of the child. So now things are changing. We've come a long way since then. People are adopting this concept that adoption is a very, very beautiful thing, and neither the parents need to be ashamed of it that they've adopted a child, neither the child has to be ashamed that he is not the biological. And I'll just like take 10 seconds to I just thought that before we start the podcast and we go into the legalese of it, I thought I'll just take you to Khalil Gibran's poem on childhood. He's written a poem on children, and he says that your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. They are with you, yet they do not belong to you. That's relevant for biological children also. So, children are children. It doesn't matter whether you have given birth to them or you've adopted them. So the first thing that, impacts the psychology of a child is when he gets to know from strangers, when he gets to know in his school that aapke ye mummy papa nahi hai, you've been adopted. So when counseling sessions happen, of course, you'll have to choose the time how you have to engage with the child. But it's very important that you open up to the child so that, the child understands that, he or she has been adopted.
Exactly. And as far as infertility is considered, The incidence is almost 20 million, 2 crores infertile couple in India. Out of that, one third have both female factor and male factor. 1% have azoospermia, that means no sperms. 1% have premature ovarian failure, that means no eggs. Still, they would want to go for IVF with donor embryo. But at the same time, on the other hand, UNICEF says that almost 3 crore children are orphaned in India. Here, 2 crores infertile couple who want a child, 3 crore children want a sweet home. But still, there is a disconnect. And the adoption, is it considered as a social stigma even now? Then what is our responsibility to break the stigma and connect these two people?
Why I agreed for this interview, when you approached me, it was a little intimidating for me that, a medical professional is asking me for an interview, because we are law people. But then I thought, that there is the word you put in, disconnect. Their parents wanting to become parents and their children wanting to be parented, right? And they have a problem here. The children are in the institutions and parents are there who are longing for children, going through IVFs and all of that. And IVF, of course, is a big breakthrough in medical science, but then there are also stories of not, so if the gynecologists, come in and kind of counsel the parents that there is also another side to it, adoption is also a way out for you. I think that's going to make a huge difference because, see, children need homes. And the whole idea about the UN Convention on Child Rights and the Juvenile Justice Act that we have in this country and the world over, the United Nations Conventions, we've been talking about this, that children need homes. We have to take them out of institutional settings. As much as we would want that children are reared by their biological parents, it's not always possible. They're orphan children, they're abandoned children. There are also surrendered. Dr. Kalpana, I'm not sure if you know about this. Parents also surrender their children, because sometimes because of physical, emotional, or other factors, they can file a surrender deed that I've given birth to this child, but I'm no longer able to, rear the child. And there are parents who are wanting to have children of their own, and that is why I brought in Khalil Gibran. That, you want children. How does it matter that they are not through your womb? They need as much care and affection, and these are bondings. The whole concept of family is through bonding, through loving each other. So children, you accept them as your own children, and adopted children become as good as your natural parents. So gynecologists have a huge role when people come, especially for IVF treatment. But Dr. Kalpana, let me tell you this: adoption is picking up. It's not like only the infertile couples are going for adoption. Children these days are very clear. When they get married, they say, oh, there's so many children waiting to be adopted, and we don't want to have our own biological children. We're going for adoption. So there's a huge shift that we are seeing. From a gynecologist perspective, you're looking at it as infertile couples. But as somebody working with Kara, now I know, interacting with people, that it's also people who've just made up their mind they want to adopt children.
Yeah, the social stigma is gradually now reducing.
Yes.
And the next question is, previously in olden days, too much of importance was given for male child, probably for last rituals. Even in our epics, Mahabharata, Dasratha was ready to sacrifice his first daughter, Shanta. And with the help of forest rishi and prayers, it was said that he was blessed with 4 male children, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Saturghana. So the regulation says that if a parent or PAP cannot go for adoption if they have 3 children, but still if they have 1 or 2 children, they can go for adoption. The regulation also says that single male cannot go for adopting a female child, that is acceptable to avoid exploitation. So can you please brief on it? And do we have any preference towards male child even now?
Yes, Dr. Kalpana, that's a big sad story of India, and some of the Asian region, that we still have male fixation, right? So that's very, very problematic, and Kara does not support gender selection. But yes, when you're prospective parents, you can go for, because supposingly you're from one state, you would want people, children of that region, and you can give your preferences. But then you go down in the hierarchy, there's a long waiting list, and you must, listeners should understand this, that it's not that you want to adopt and you just go on the site and there are children waiting for you to be picked up. There is such a huge waiting on the Kara site. Now, this is very important, two or more children, that if you have two or more children, the 2022 guidelines said two or more children, right? Now,
More
because,
they cannot go. Yeah. More than
yeah,
three, they cannot go. One or two,
yeah,
they can.
yes. So the problem is that, there is, you will have to understand this, that Kara, which is a statutory body under the government of India. Now, this is careful, that this is looking at the best interest of the child. So, when, and I may be wrong, but how I understand that when the parents come to a gynecologist, the center focus of a gynecologist is the parent sitting in front of them. And that is how you recommend the IVF treatment and all that. Kara, on the other hand, Kara is looking at the best interest of the child. So we are looking at, our perspectives are very different, right? So when Kara looks at the best interest of the child, they want that when the child goes to the family, he or she is well taken care of. So they have put this embargo that if you have two children of yours, unless you opt for a special child, in case you're opting for a special child, then you don't have this embargo. Okay. But in case you are wanting a child, and you already have two children, then Kara feels that it is not in the best interest of the child that he or she should be given for adoption. So it's a change of perspective, because we are looking at the best interest of child, and we have to look at the financial status. Are they able to, look after the child? So that is why this embargo has been put. Did I answer your question? Did I get you correctly?
Yeah. You have brought another point also. Special children, how to place the children. Sometimes the children have malformation, mentally challenged children. From the parent side, honestly speaking, it is really difficult to maintain special needed children. Then in adoption, how do you proceed? And parents, do they accept it? If they don't accept, what would be the future of those children?
So, Dr. Kalpana, I'm sure your viewers must have seen the former Chief Justice of India. He has two sons, and he's adopted two specially abled girls, Priya and Mahi, if I'm not getting their names wrong, right? So people do adopt special children, okay? Because we who love children and who are committed to the society, sometimes, when we have the wherewithal, we do want to adopt. So it's not like, but otherwise, prospective parents, they also, like the way we do a home study report has to be garnered for the prospective parents. In the same way, when the child is referred to them, the child report, gender, all of that, is given. So you also have a column of preferences, right? In preferences, for example, you can choose the zone. So if I'm from North India, I can choose that zone, and neighboring states I can choose the preferable gender that I want, and a child who's like a normal healthy child. So all that report, the child report, also comes for the prospective parents, and they can reject the baby when the referral comes. So, but they get a chance of 3 referrals. If they reject 3 referrals, then they go down in the list. So they go deep down in the list. So of course, you can choose. But if you're committed and you want a specially able children, then all these embargoes of 2 children or more does not count in, because we want these children also to be taken care of. Otherwise, you were saying, what happens to these children? thankfully, the government of India, it has institutions, because see, the whole premise there is that a child should get a family. But God forbid if the child doesn't get a family, then the state as parents patria, looks after the children in institutions. So they have institutions where differently able children are taken well care of.
That is great. And coming to child abduction, as far as accredited hospital, all hospitals usually teach their staffs about code pink or code purple and announce that code so that the security will be alerted to stop, close the exit, and also CCTV monitoring. And the dress code of the child and identity of the child is announced.
Okay.
If child abduction happens, what is the responsibility of the hospital management or obstetrician? And you clearly tell the punishment for child abduction so that the public will also understand how they should not plan for it.
Yes. This is a very important question that you brought in, because what is happening in certain cases is that when parents, they're so desperate sometimes to get a child that they're even ready to pay someone, and then these middle persons who go and pick up a newborn child from the hospital and kind of pass on. Or sometimes there's also exchange of because of gender preferences. There's also that now, we had the Indian Penal Code earlier. Now we have the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. And Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, there is a section 137 in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which deals with kidnapping. Okay, and kidnapping is a very, very serious offense in India. So if you take a child, and child is anyone, who's below 18 years of age, right? So even from like the moment the child is born, if you remove that child, if you move away that child from lawful guardianship, so that means from the parent, in this case, in the hospital case that you're mentioning, that if you remove the child from the custody of the mother or lawful guardian, in that case, supposedly the child is in your nursery, because of certain problems, the child is in the nursery. And that point of time, the mother is there and the hospital is, the quote unquote, the lawful guardian at that point of time. Then immediate police FIR has to be registered. And everyone must understand that this is a very serious offense, which entails mandatory punishment. So there are certain offenses in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita which has mandatory punishment, and you cannot be let off with a fine if you're, even if you decide that I'll return the baby. Because once there are kidnapping charges against you and it is proved that you took the child out of the lawful guardianship, then necessarily you would end up in jail, which can extend up to 7 years. So that's a very serious offense.
The next discussion would be if a child is deserted in the hospital, probably because of unwanted pregnancy, premarital pregnancy, pregnancy following mishap, then what is the responsibility of hospital management or obstetrician for this?
Dr. Kalpana, which region are you from? Where is this podcast? I mean, where are you from?
I'm from Tamil Nadu, but all over Pan India, the people are watching.
Okay. I was just hoping that it would be somewhere in the south, because I wanted to bring in and I did some research before I came for the podcast. In Kerala, I don't know about Tamil Nadu, maybe it's happening there also. In Kerala, there's a thing called Amath Hotel Initiative. I'm just hoping I'm getting the pronunciation right. And you know why I thought of it? Because just in last Christmas, a newborn baby was abandoned. Okay. So what this Kerala government has done is it has put up cradles. Okay. Amath Hotel scheme. So if it's an unwanted child, rather than, because sometimes we hear in the newspapers that the child was found in a waste bin, because sometimes unwed mothers, or for different reasons, in India, we have a lot of poverty and all of that. And, there's a stigma attached to unwed mothers. Sometimes you find newborn babies in the dustbins. So to avoid that kind of a thing, what they've done is there's a cradle scheme which is called the Amath Hotel Initiative, where the child is unwanted child, deserted child. They are there, and the government takes them under the wings. Now, what happens in the case of abandoned children is that all over India there is a mechanism where first it is tried that the biological parents are found. Okay, if they are not found after advertising it in the dailies, police does lot of things, that found and lost thing. Once all that procedure, it's a long procedure, once it is done, then the child is declared legally free for adoption, LFA. And if you would go to the Kara website now, earlier it used to take long for LFA. Now they have really streamlined it, so deserted children after initial inquiry become eligible for LFA. And Dr. Kalpana, you'll be surprised to know sometimes in hospitals, supposingly there's an unwed mother, okay, and she says that I've given birth to this child, but I don't want the child. Okay, immediately this hospital can get in touch with the local CWC, Child Welfare Committee. One of the member of the Child Welfare Committee can come, and you can file a surrender deal, and in the presence of ZIP. Now, supposingly the unwed mother does not want to disclose her identity, does not want to sign that paper that I'm surrendering the child, because we would also have to factor in the privacy of the mother, right? So in that case, this child, even when the identity of the mother, becomes a deserted child. So the laws have been really thought through. There's been a lot of thinking which has gone through all of these procedures, and there's really, the government has really thought, and the NGOs have a big role in it, that very, very perfect measures, as perfect as they can be, have been factored in.
You have nicely brought another point. For example, the government adoption agency has been trying to trace the biological mother for a period of 2 months or 4, according to regulation. They couldn't find the biological parent. Now, legally, the child is free for adoption. Adoption process had been done, given to PAP. If biological parent comes little late and claims the baby, then what would be the next scenario?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Dr. Kalpana. But see, once a child is made legally free for adoption, right? The process of giving him or her for adoption takes some time. It's not like today he or she becomes legally free for adoption. Once all that process is done, a referral is sent, a home study report is done, prospective parents take up the child. For a 2-year period also, there is a sort of a communication that happens. But before that, there has to be a court order. There's a court order which gives you a right over the adopted child. Now, once that process is done, there's a section 63 of the Juvenile Justice Act, which says that the child becomes, so there's a legal fiction that is created, that the child becomes as good as a natural born child. And all the rights and obligation that he has, as if he was naturally born to these adoptive parents. Okay, so his ties with the biological parents are severed. Okay, it will be a case study. If after all of this procedure, a parent comes and says, "No, I am the biological father." Then what is a very important thing, Dr. Kalpana, that we'll have to factor in is that the Convention on the Rights of the Child says that the best interest of the child is best served when the views of the child are also taken into consideration. Supposingly that this becomes a court matter, then it will be on a case-to-case basis where the views of the child would also have to be factored in. Okay, but the child's linkage with the biological families gets severed once the adoption deed is finalized by the court. So it becomes, he or she becomes as good as a natural born child to the adoptive parents.
If the
So
child,
the parents shouldn't feel that, oh my God, the biological parents would suddenly pop up. Even if in a surrender deed, counseling is done of the parents, okay? Then the child, before declaring him legally free for adoption and putting him or her up on the Kara website for adoption, there is a cooling period of 2 months where they're counseled and told that, you will never get the child back. So you please uh, rethink, be very assured. So all that process goes on at the back end.
but when a child is almost 5 year, 4 year, he can give his view. But if the child is too small, then whom does the court of law support?
Court of law does not support anyone but the child. It is, they would look at the best interest of the child. Will the best interest of the child be served? And because now it's not only the best interest of the child, they also have adoption documents with them, and the child is living with the adoptive parents. So is their child, for all practical purposes, as good as a natural born child? So the court is not going to interfere with that order, because that's not going to be in the best interest of the child.
Is it not an injustice to the biological parent? Because
No,
I,
it's not, because a long process has happened where now there would be that's what I said. When when you talk about injustice, you would also have to think about the best interest of the child. You know that the best interest of the child, now to sever the child from the family which is adopted. So yeah, in some cases where the court feels that something like this has happened, then in those very few minuscule cases, there could be. But again, that I said, that would be case to case basis. So
yeah.
the adoptive parents needn't think that, oh my God, that will be, because a lot of process happens when a child is declared legally free for adoption. And sometimes, people criticize that, oh my God, this child was found in a railway station and still, he or she has not been declared legally free for adoption, because the government takes all care that, something like this doesn't happen. So, they from their end, because their idea is to restore the child back to the biological family, so they try to move heaven and earth to do that. So it's only when they're very clear that now the child is legally free for adoption do they put him or her up in the Kara website for adoption. Yeah, so that's only in very minuscule cases, one of its kind. Then the court will have to step in.
Okay. Now, many of our infertile couple, after trying few cycles of IVF, they would come to gynecologist asking for baby, telling that if you have some additional baby, deserted baby, or twin gestation babies, please give it to us. How do we have additional babies? They don't understand that, and the legal formalities behind each and every procedure. So
Yes.
now, what is the gynecologist's role to guide them properly for legal adoption?
Yes. Dr. Kalpana, I think both your questions are interconnected. Now you're saying that, sometimes the parents come and they say, we have not been able to have a baby, or aap logon ke paas to you must be having children. And so, you give us, there could be an unwed mother delivering in your hospital. And, we can just do it surreptitiously. Wahan se utha ke, you just have to put the child here. The mother doesn't want the child and we want the child. So it's hunky dory for everybody, right? But there the problems will arise, that later, because you've not gone through the legal way, right? And you could be hauled up, you could have, there could be penal provisions for that, because Kara mandates that any child who's taken up for adoption has to go through the legal process, because see, child is not a commodity. Child is not a commodity that I take it from here and I give it here and I give it. So you would have to then counsel them that it's the future of the child, and the child is also the parent's patria. The state is the parent's patria. So one is the biological parent and then the state. So the child is in the larger custody of the state also. So in case we have to do this, taking from the biological parent to the wanted parents, the state will have to be factored in. And they just have to go to the Kara website and get them registered, because you must understand that there's a long waiting line. And so if the hospitals start doing this, that they pick up this child, and there is a list of parents who went through the legal way and waiting for adoptions to happen, could not get a chance because they did not. So legally it has to be done through the Kara website. So if you look at the Kara website, it's called carings. The word is very nice. It says carings. Caring is for all these guidelines for your adoption. It says central adoption guidance system. So that's very important. So you have to go through the Kara route.
In olden days, or even now, domestic adoption is also not new to us.
Yeah.
In later half, if biological parent, for legal formalities they follow. So if biological parent wants the child back from adopted parent, how do we proceed?
If I'm getting your question correctly, you're talking about relative adoption, right?
Relative adoption.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing this in, because I should have answered this to you when you talked about when the biological parents want the child back. So what happens, in our families is that, you make this arrangement that, okay, you carry the baby for me, you already have two, and you carry the baby for me. When it's delivered, I'll take it. Okay. But once the child is delivered and you take up, 1 year down the line, they come back to you. No, I'm having a lot of psychological problems, and give it back to me. Okay. And then your families are in feud, and then you go to the court. Now the courts cannot help you, because the court has to give it to the biological parent, right? Because that's a very illegal arrangement that you did, which law does not support. So Dr. Kalpana, when you go to the Kara website, you would see that there are different categories of adoption. So one is relative adoption. So relative adoption also has to go through a process. Okay, that's easier because you're adopting from your relative. So see, the government is also thinking that in case adoption has to happen, it should be in the same social milieu from which the child is. So the bestest would be relative adoption, right? But then it has to be, because when the government, when statutory authority comes in, then some amount of counseling would be done. You would know the pros and cons. There would be a sort of a period where you would be given time to rethink and all of that, and then a legally formal structure would be made out. In relative adoption, which happens outside the Kara system, is that you have an informal arrangement. Okay? And then the woman after 6 months decides that, oh no, I'm having dreams about the child, I can't, and then they come back taking the child, and the child is theirs biologically, and you have nothing to show that the child is yours. So the issue that you raised in the previous questions is more on relative adoption when you don't go through the legal method. So in Kara, you also have relative adoption. So I think if you're planning to adopt a child of a relative, then you must go, which is a relatively easier process. But you should go through the Kara website.
And our regulation says that it is right of the child to know about the biological parent. Obviously, for Karna, Radha and Kunti had a conflict in between them. So if the child meets the biological parent, then what would happen?
This is a very, very problematic area. See, what we'll have to balance is the right of the child, plus also the privacy of the biological parents. Okay. So we are not trying to pit the right of the child against the, so supposingly, just giving an example, supposingly some parents, I told you, surrender a child. Okay. And in that surrender deed, they write that our child should never know about us. Okay. And we are also saying that the child, because, convention also says, the UN convention also says the child has a right to know its identity. Okay. Now, there is a right that the child has, but then there is a right of the biological parents which they've exercised, that their privacy needn't be compromised. Okay. In case they have written it that, we will not, our identity need not be revealed, then, their wish would be given. So there was a case, in fact, there in, if I'm not mistaken, Calcutta High Court just in 2024. where this child, who was probably adopted by a Swiss couple, wanted to come back, wanted to, so he went to that adoption agency jahan se referral gaya tha, and he said, you have to give me the papers. You have to tell me the biological parents. Okay. But the court, keeping the best interest of the child, but also keeping the privacy of the parents, denied that request. So that's a very, very, a ticklish issue, that yes, the child has a right to know its identity, but yes, supposing an unwed mother, assault victim, rape victim, right? She's a survivor. You don't want to disclose her identity. So you cannot, the child cannot say, I have a right to know the identity. So this is a balancing that between right to privacy and right to identity that, the rules kind of do.
Biological parents also can give in writing that their identity will not be disclosed.
Yeah, yes. In the surrender deed, they can write that. Yes.
So a child is adopted now. The child is with PAP. After, if there is a conflict between PAP and adopted child, if they could not adjust with each other, then what next?
So, if you would go to the Kara website, and people should, there is a protocol written, and then they're also frequently asked questions and all of this. So, once, one study is done for the prospective parents, whether they are suitable enough to raise a child. See, and there's a difference, Dr. Kalpana, when you do infertility treatments, right? The parents come to you, they're paying the fees, and we're doing all of that. Here, because the best interest of the child is factored in. So there is a home study report done whether they are suitable to be parents. A lot of work goes into it. But after having done this legalist, you give the child. The process doesn't stop there. Okay. You have till the next 2 years, because the child has to fit into the system. Okay. So for the next 2 years, what you do is that you keep going back, and you keep understanding, has the child adjusted to the parents? Have the parents adjusted to the child? It could be that the child is okay, the parents don't want the child, okay? Or the parents are okay, but the child says, I cannot just, if he or she is able to give the views, is little older, then, so for a 2-year period, then these things can be decided. So there was a case in Kara where there was a discussion that, there's a fees which goes in. So should fees be returned or something, so they were dealing with this legalese that, because they've given the fees, but the child has been returned. So Dr. Kalpana, I hope I'm able to make your audience understand that this is in the best interest of the child. So it doesn't mean that you just put the child there and it's over. You wait for the child to get adjusted, So in case there is a total mismatch and the child is not adjusting, the parents are not happy, then the child goes back to the adoption agency. It goes. So there's a study. So there's a 2-year study period that you do. You do a follow-up also on adoption. It's just like, when we send our children to hostel, right? And we see if the child is having a problem, we think of taking back, do some counseling, and then say, oh no, I'm not going to send him to this school. I'm going to put him in another school. This is not working out, So the state, as parents patria, is continuously monitoring, till the time they're satisfied that everything is good, and then they move
on. Recently, we have stringent surrogacy bill protect our females from exploitation. Now, for inter-country adoption, what are the regulations we have?
Yes, because India, there is also a population of India which is not well off, and sometimes these foreign people can come and, just kind of dole out money. That was happening in the surrogacy thing, that, people who could be taken for money, and that is why, commercial surrogacy had really picked up. Now, so that the same thing doesn't happen in adoption. Adoption laws have been very clear. If you look at the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, there is inter-country adoption. Now, inter-country adoption again is done through CARA. Okay, so the first preference actually is given to within India. So if the child is not able to find adoptive parents in India, right, then they're put in up for inter-country adoptions. Now, in the inter-country adoption also, the same thing happens, of course, because CARA is situated in India. So you would ask some foreign adoption agency which is nearer to their place of work, and there's a convention which is called the Hague Convention 1993. So all the Hague countries would have their offices and all that who would do this, and non-Hague countries may you could either go to the Indian diplomatic mission and all of that. So this home report has to be done. Okay, so only once prospective parents are vetted, because they could be child trafficking, they could use these children for forced labor, for sex trafficking, all of that. So the same rigor is done there. Okay, and then India mein we do all those formalities, and then the child is sent. So there's a very, very rigorous process which is regulated again by CARA of the inter-country adoption. And you cannot have an inter-country adoption without factoring in CARA, because inter-country to becomes all the more problematic now, because you would need the child's passport, visa, and all of that, for the child to be taken there. So CARA and will have to be factored in, and the procedure is very, very rigorous again, like for adoption, where you have a home study report, a follow-up, and all of that. And they're very careful of the fact that the child is not taken up for is not used for any other thing, that they really want children as their natural born children.
Our infertile couple.
Sorry?
Some of our infertile couples, after trying few cycles of IVF, going for adoption, and coming back and telling us it is a tedious process and a long waiting list is there, and there is an age limit also. Above 55, they can't go for adoption, if I am right, because only after 45 approximately they come to a conclusion about adoption, and there is a long waiting list, and sometimes older children are given for adoption. It becomes really difficult for us. That is the patient's view. And what is your view on that?
See, this problem arises when you're thinking of adoption as a, nothing else is worked out. Let's take a child for adoption, right? My thing is that when you opt for IVF, simultaneously you must opt for adoption, right? IVF also, Dr. Kalpana, if I'm not mistaken, it takes sometimes many cycles, and it's a very physical, draining process, right? Sometimes, you're lucky to just have it. Sometimes it takes, so having a child is an onerous process. So same way in the adoption process, it's not like, it's just like, you just go there and, get a child. Yes, the process is difficult. So what happens is that you've tried a lot of cycles of IVF and then it's not working out. Then you wake up and then you go for adoption, right? And then obviously the system is such that, the prospective parents who have just out of love for children have enrolled in there, after they attain the age of 25. So obviously they would be up on the preference list. So you should, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, because I'll be taking out the doctor's profession that way. You have to counsel them that the easy way out for you is adoption, and try IVF, great, and have one as adopted child and one IVF works out. It's a win-win situation for everyone, for the child who's waiting for a family and you who want a child. So why can't, my request to prospective parents is try both this. I mean, enroll for both. God willingly, whatever comes your way, it's God, you want children and you can have it either way. So don't go for adoption after you have spent 10 years doing something and then you say, and then you're at the border line. Because see, don't think this 45, this cumulative age of 80 is problematic. This is not problematic, because you must understand the thinking that has gone. 0 to 8, 0 to 2, You should be 40 or cumulative age 85. अब आप खुद सोचिए, you child needs protection at least till about 18 to 20 years. So you should be in a position to look after the child, no? Because the state is giving the custody of the child which was with the state to you. So it would have to ensure that you are, at least physically fit, at least think, something. See, things can really go wrong. But, at least they're matching up the age, that you are like physically fit, to look after the child. So you're 60 by the time the child is 20. So I think that's a very, very, if you really put your mind to it, it's a brilliant thing that they've done. If you and me were making the rules, I think we would do the same thing. We would not give a 1-year-old child to probably a 55-year-old person, because I don't know, your state, my state retires people at 58.
Yeah. But the thing is, counseling for a patient, when they come for the first visit itself, adoption is a difficult task. And when they have, for example, ovarian insufficiency, they have very less eggs. They are little hesitant to go for donor oocyte program. So practically, I don't think it is possible to counsel for adoption when they come for infertility. But it is the mindset of people. Sometimes they go for adoption and also continue IVF treatment. And can you please, some of the legal cases you have encountered, interesting legal cases in another few minutes?
There is something called foster care. Okay. Supposingly, you don't want a child for adoption. Okay. You just want to take a child under foster care. That means you're providing a child family to the child whose parents may not be there. For example, they're in prison, they're incarcerated or something, and you're providing for the child. Now, there is a provision for foster care adoption. So if the child has stayed with you for 2 years, okay, and now the child is also legally free for adoption, and you want to take up that child for adoption. Now, it's very easy to take that child for adoption because, the Kara has also seen you looking after the child for 2 years and all of that. So a very interesting case came up in Kara, right? What happened in this case was that there was a period of 2 years. 2-year period has to be there, that the child has to be in foster care. Now this child was turning 18, but still the 2-year period had not elapsed. So these prospective parents, they wrote to Kara, okay, saying that your guidelines, your procedure says that it has to be 2-year foster care. If we wait for the 2 year, the child would already be 18, and then, it doesn't make sense to adopt the child. So I was telling you about this case, the foster care. I don't know how much you missed. There's a provision of foster care, right? In foster care, what happens is that you don't adopt a child, but you take the child under your wings, and you look after the child. He can have connection with his or her biological family, or not even have connection, but you've not adopted the child. And there's a concept called foster care adoption. So once the child is under your foster care for 2 years, then you can adopt the child if both parties, and the child also by then has views that he or she wants to stay with the family. There was a particular case where the child was about to turn 18, okay, but the 2-year period had not elapsed. So there was still a gap between the 2 year this thing. But the child was very keen that she gets adopted by the family, and the parents were also keen that they adopt. So when they wrote to Kara, right? So I don't know the final outcome of that case, but when it was given for me for comments, as a legal member of Kara, my whole idea was that, see, these are specific cases where the child's best interest lies that he gets adopted to that family, and 2-year period was done to understand to make the child settle. And when Kara is clear that the child is well settled into the family, then procedure should not come in the way of giving him a good family. And Kara agreed to that opinion. So the specific cases that come up of Kara, see, the Kara has been very careful that they do not allow changes in rules, because then you may give preferential treatment to somebody. So when there are steering committee meetings, so if there are specific cases which come up to Kara, where you really feel, so a lot of mind is put into it, that, this is what the prospective parents are asking, this is what the child is asking, this is what the rule says, what do we do? So they're brainstorming happening, where you see that the procedure should not come in the way of the best interest of the child. So if little bit of tweaking is required, that is done. So Kara is doing brilliant work, and the team is so committed that they're working for the children. And this very important Calcutta High Court case that I told you, this was there, the jurisprudence between right of identity and right of privacy was settled, where they said that we cannot just let one right be paramount over the other. We will have to give equal weightage to both the rights. So privacy of the biological parents, privacy of the unwed mother was and all these Kara guidelines that have come. There was a case, Lakshmi Kant versus Union of India, where there was a lot of discussion about inter-country adoptions. So this guidelines that have come in the Juvenile Justice Act, Section 59, on inter-country adoption, is because of these important cases coming up from the Supreme Court, where they wanted to regulate inter-country adoption, so that children from this country are not trafficked into other countries and all that.
And can you please tell me adoption process in 2 to 3 lines, age limit and regulation? Because we are running.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll just quickly tell you, prospective parents should go to the Kara website. Okay, they have to get themselves registered. A message comes to them, they're already registered. Then there is a whole list of documents that are there, and the list is really long. Don't get hassled with the list, because I'm reiterating again and again, because it is the best interest of the child which the state has to take care of. So they want to be sure of everything. And that is because it is a long list. They give you 30 days to upload those documents. You have to upload those documents. So you'll have to do it from a computer. You can't do it on a mobile. You're getting a child, you're a natural child you're getting. So you'll have to do some hard work. Once that is done and that is vetted, all your documents are in place, you put up in the list. You have to get in touch with the adoption agency, which is nearer to your place. Okay. They would come for a home study report. They would come to your house. Don't think that they'll see how rich or poor you are. They are just coming to see whether you can raise a child, give him or her a decent lifestyle, not a very fancy lifestyle. So people have this misgiving that, they want that, our house should be like this. Nothing of the sort. Are you capable of giving love and care to the child? Do you have the wherewithal to give the child? Is there somebody, who's vouching for you? Just like in our natural born children, that God forbid, if something happens to me and my husband, somebody is there, who would be able to look after the child. You have extended family, relative, friend, or somebody who would be there. Once this home report is done, you get that's sorted out. Then when you come in the queue, you get referrals. So you can choose the region. So supposing I'm from North India, I'm in Delhi, I can choose 2 states, I want children from that area. Or you could go pan India. There your chances increase, because state-wise your list could be problematic. There may be lesser children, gender, health, everything, preferences can be given depending on the availability of the child. So they'll match the child with you. If you're not satisfied, they'll give you another referral. Within 1 month, they give you 3 referrals. If you reject all 3 of them, then you go down the list, and then other parents come up the list, and that is how the process is. Then the child is given to you. There is a follow-up of the child, and once that there's a adoption deed that is issued to you, and the child becomes as good as your natural born child. I try to just speak telegraphically.
Yeah. What is the age limit for adoption? I think it is
25 if you're single,
50.
25, and 40 if your cumulative age 0 to 2. Then there is a table that you can go through, 55, 60, cumulative age, 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to, so they've matched it up like this.
At the age of 55, they give 8 to 18-year-old.
8 to 18, yeah, because that is the child is older and you are also older, but then you don't, child needs care for a lesser time. So it's a corresponding table. But definitely the child is 0 to 2, then definitely 45. Cumulative age and 25. And single people can adopt. I hope that should be clear, that single parents can adopt. The only embargo is that a male single cannot adopt a girl child. Okay. And if you are married, then consent of both parents are required. You can't do this that the husband, because the child then needs both parents. Okay. So you can't say this that, oh, if a single person can adopt, then what if my husband is not ready for the adoption, but I am? But then you're living as a unit. Then both of you have to be on board for adoption. So that cannot happen, that one is agreeing, one is not agreeing.
They're separated little later. Then
separated, then one consent, you'll have to show the separation deed. Divorcees, separated, widow, all of them can adopt. But if you're married,
go for it. Anyone can take care of the baby.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Jyoti. It was really amazing interview. I think many of the gynecologists would have got enough information. Not only gynecologists, even common public would have got really interesting and informative discussion, so that they can plan their family little earlier and they will not feel that they've crossed the age and waiting list is too long. Thank you so much, Professor Jyoti. Finally, it is my responsibility to thank our Fogsi President, Sunita Tandulwadkar ma'am, who had given wonderful opportunity, a podcast series for all chairpersons. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana, and thank you to the President for making me do this. I'm so thankful to you. It was really enriching for me. Thank you.